The Game Boy Advance. A simple system from a simpler time. At least, it holds a special place in my heart. In the early 2000s, Game Boys were the big boys in the block, and it looked as if it were to stay that way. With its massive library, backwards compatibility with the original Game Boy, and ridiculous sales numbers, the Game Boy Advance was a formidable force. When the Nintendo DS first came out, to me it looked like a bulky, over-designed family van compared to the sleek, simple Game Boy Advanced. Mind you, I didn't own either of these consoles until years later, and I learned to love the DS. However, I don't think my prejudices were completely unjustified. In fact, even today when I go on holidays, often I'll leave my 3DS, Vita and Switch at home in favour of my Game Boy. For the hipster points, if nothing else. I could go on and on about how good the Game Boy is, but I'll be here all day. What I will say is that in such a robust library of games, there's sure to be some hidden gems. Summer Night's Swordcraft story, despite its convoluted name, is one of these. The game is a spin-off of the Summer Night series, of which only 5 games, including this one, have been translated to English. I would describe the game as an action RPG, a refreshing change to the slow pace of most turn-based JRPGs. With its steampunk setting and crafting mechanics, the game ticks a lot of boxes, well, for me at least. That's enough rambling, let's get into it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to spoil the shit out of the game. Upon starting up the game, you are greeted by an absolutely killer little intro movie with some pumpin' jams that just make you want to go and summon some crafts or whatever you do in this game. Just watch this and tell me you're not pumped up. Yeah, feeling it! Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Your playable character can only be 2 genders, male and female, clearly a product of its age. The male and female characters have very minor dialogue and romance changes. For what it matters, I chose the female protagonist, Pratty. Now it's time for round 1 of the Wheel of Cliché Beginnings. Our game starts with A, a sleeping hero, B, a hero just moved into town, C, a long, seemingly abstract speech that makes sense after you finish the game, or D, our hero being imprisoned or on death row. And the winner is... the old sleeping hero. How original. Awakening to the sound of a screaming mother, concerned, our protagonist Pratty falls down the stairs. The game handles the obligatory "what's your protagonist's name" question by having Pratty's mother, Amara's, concerned about her child having amnesia. Perhaps not the most common first concern after a fall, but you know what? Still more realistic than Pokemon's attempts. We learn that Pratty's father, Shintetsu, the Craft Lord of Iron, died 3 years ago. Craft Lords are what seem to be rulers and protectors of Wisestone. They are elected on a competence hierarchy of crafting and combat abilities, with Diamond, Iron, Ruby, Sapphire, Crystal, Jade and Amber being the ranks and title of each Craft Lord. Anyway, the Craft Lords are holding a tournament to determine the next Craft Lord of Iron, succeeding Pratty's dead father. The rules of the tournament are simple. A contestant can only enter with a weapon crafted by themselves, and to win, the contestant must make their opponent yield or break his or her weapon. It is at the opening ceremony where Pratty first meets her future rivals and acquaintances. And now for round 2 of the pleb games. Guess the stereotype. Definitely not evil. Edgelord that thinks he's Socrates. A wholesome mentor. A rich smug cunt. Tsundere. Annoying little... boy? Traps, they get me every time. After the ceremony, we go to our home away from home, the Silver Guild. Here we are greeted by Guildmaster and father figure Bron. At this point, you get to choose your Guardian Beast via a 3-question quiz. A Guardian Beast is your battle companion and crafting buddy throughout the game. Each one of the 4 available have different abilities and personalities. Sugar the Princess is the character I chose in my first run through the game. While that was 9 years ago, I remember all she wanted to do was bang the protagonist regardless of the gender. This gives her at least a little bit of character. Too bad the same can't be said for the rest of the Guardian Beasts. Rasho, the Demon Prince, is who I chose on this run. I found his character to be likeable, albeit a little bland. The other 2, Kudi and Zantek, don't actually have any lines in the game. Zantek the robot speaks in an indecipherable robot language, and Kudi the Pokemon just says Kudi over and over again like a fucking Pikachu. Although I do believe you can change its name to something more inappropriate for a laugh. After a brief introduction with your new companion, you were told that this guardian beast, Rasho in my case, is the same as your father's. Despite literally summoning a demon from the ground, Bron moves to more pressing matters, informing Pratty of a discount on iron ore. Arriving at the store, Pratty finds that the redhead girl from the ceremony has bought all the iron ore. As she too is one of his students, Bron also told her about the sale. The redhead, also known as Scenario, refuses to sell us any ore. Not knowing what to do, Pratty returns to the guild. She suggests to Bron that she could borrow a weapon and go into the Labyrinth to mine some ore, but Bron seems downright offended by the idea, instead telling her to go in with only a hammer, as the hammer can not only forge a weapon, but also a woman! After a brief encounter with the most passionate security guard ever, we find ourselves in the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth is a dungeon that runs deep under Weston. It is filled with what's called stray summons or monsters. Here we are greeted by old mate Scenari, once again refusing to give us any ore, and generally being a sourpuss, she declares Pratty to be her rival and heads deeper into the dungeon. After smashing a few monsters, we once again come across Scenari, this time staring at an underwater observatory? Yeah, righto. Her mood seems to have changed to be less of a cunt. Scenari mentions having a sister and seems to be quite fond of her. Not far from here, Pratty finds a chest containing some iron ore, thus allowing us to craft our first weapon. Crafting in the game is relatively simple. You gather items in the Labyrinth, break them down into materials, and by using techniques or recipes, craft the materials into weapons. Bron will give you a new technique for each weapon type every day. They can also be found by doing side quests or just generally exploring. By finding possessed weapons and armor in the Labyrinth, you will find Mystic Ore. This allows you to recraft an item with higher stats or an elemental affinity. You can also scrap your older weapons, recovering half the materials it costs to make the weapon. After crafting a novice knife, Scenari comes in teasing Pratty about it taking her so long to make her first weapon. Suddenly, a man walks in the door and hands Pratty a letter. It's a notice of her first battle in the tournament, her opponent being Chavs of the Gold Guild. Now I should probably talk about the combat in the game. The game has a real-time battle system comparable to, say, a fighting game. Rather than a deep combo-based system, the game keeps it simple with just one physical attack, using spells and weapon variations to keep it interesting. You can win a fight by either reducing your opponent's hit points or breaking their weapon, if they have one that is. Personally, I prefer to use swords and drills as they seem to be the most balanced weapon. Axes and spears are too slow and knuckles didn't do enough damage. Hit recognition is tight and the combat is slow to begin with, but has a satisfying progression arc as your character gets stronger. Overall, I found the combat to be a little easy but undeniably fun. Chavs is a huge dude with a buster sword, declaring that he don't need no guardian beast. But after I stun-locked him into oblivion, he said that the only reason Pratty won was because of her guardian beast. Look, we all know what he's actually thinking. We've all been there. This concludes our first day. At the end of each day, you get to choose who to hang out with. Initially, you can only choose between Scenari or your guardian beast, but this expands as the game goes on. Most of the time, the conversation is just a recap of the day's events, but there are light romantic scenes later in the game. Yes, there are no hentai scenes in the game, 0 out of 10. The next morning, Pratty delivers a shipment of swords for Bron to the port town Vance. The buyer talks of a recent drop in quality from Bron's rival, the Gold Guild. Returning to Wyston, Pratty is stopped by a mustached gentleman by the name of Nigel. On behalf of the Gold Guild, he offers to buy 10 swords for 5,000 summer night dollars, an impressive sum for this point of the game. You can accept or reject his offer. Hell, if you play your cards right, you can even keep the money and the swords. Teaching new kids that thievery is moral if you can get away with it. Upon entering the Labyrinth, Scenari reveals that the Gold Guild is reselling apprentice swords as top quality goods. After this shocking revelation, Pratty and Scenari storm down to the docks to confront Nigel. Here we find the smug blonde twat, or nasty little runt as our girl Pratty puts it, from the opening ceremony. The game is kind enough to let me settle the dispute by decking him in the schnoz. The sweet feeling of hatred. See, Pokemon, it's not that hard to ride a rival that isn't a fucking pussy. Praddy gives Cuntface, also known as Viril, an old-fashioned beatdown. He makes some shitty excuse about the weapons he used being inferior as he did not craft it. He then has the nerve to declare Praddy his rival. Oh, you wish, mate. To finish the day, Praddy wins a rather uneventful tournament fight with the throwaway character Kennen. Viril now becomes a hangout option. You know, if you're one of those people who date arseholes and then you're all like, I can fix him, and then wonder why your relationships never last. Praddy awakens to the news that Bron's nephew Razzie has gone missing in the Labyrinth. Bron conveniently has a sore back so he can't look for it. Of course the adults are fucking useless in the game, so down the Labyrinth we go. In the dungeon, we find some mysterious babe standing next to a sword in the ground. She informs us that the sword was crafted by Praddy's father, while being rather mysterious and being a babe. Praddy hammers a hole in the floor and finds Razzie. Turns out she's been trapped by a big spider dude. After killing the obligatory giant spider, the little prick Razzie starts calling Praddy Big Sister. Ooh. Scenario then comes and saves us from the boredom of Razzie's dialogue. Oh, I meant to say being trapped down a hole. She then asks us if we've seen her sister. I wonder who Scenario's sister is. Scenario hands Praddy the notice of her next tournament opponent. Oh, it's Razzie. This is so sad. Alexa played Despacito. The game then confirms Razzie's a girl, and fighting her proves to be even more of a pain than tolerating her crappy dialogue. After crushing Razzie's hopes and dreams, she's all like, don't forget about the flowers when you become a craft knight. To that I say, flowers are useless to Motherland, and easy to crush like Zissy boy. After revolution, I replaced with iron statue of strong Soviet comrade Praddy. So that's the end of day 3. Razzie's added to the roster of hangout buddies. The following morning, Praddy is greeted by her next opponents in the tournament, the twins Ariel and Mariel. They are rather irrelevant to the plot and a mere roadblocks to my path to communist utopia, Conrad. Alright, enough commie jokes. What I meant to say was our path. As Bron is telling Praddy how to get a new weapon to defeat the twins, an earthquake shakes the building, and Bron comments that it was like this 3 years ago. To proceed with the game, we need to get particular parts from the locked area in the Labyrinth. A mysterious babe chick tells us the craft lord of Sapphire, Sakuro, has the key to go deeper into the Labyrinth. We find Sakuro and ask him about the key, but Sakuro has different ideas. How sick was that pause in the music? I think now is probably as good a time as any to talk about the music. The soundtrack is a highlight of the game. Normally I can't stand the sound of the Game Boy Advance's sound chip, but I found it was utilised very well. Some of the upbeat rock tracks are downright killer, with extraordinarily layered, complex melodies and compositions. Think Mega Man. While the overworld songs give you a sense of joy and adventure similar to the Pokemon games. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for some of the slower songs, with the sound chip making them sound more like the Black Eyed Peas attempted a ballad rather than the gentle string sound they're trying to achieve. Where they absolutely nailed it is in the sound effects. Every time you level up, craft a weapon, win a battle or get a new technique, the game will reward you with a unique little melody that is so uplifting I think I might need medication to deal with the withdrawals. But my favourite effect has to be the dramatic pause, followed by a shing sound and then music so pumping it makes you want to start a revolution. Just stop it. Anyway, Sakura makes us do a standard fetch quest for some materials and rewards us with a new technique. A ladle? NANI? Returning to Sakura, he informs us that the materials we gathered before were in fact seafood and vegetables. In a devilish twist, our special training turns out to be cooking a curry.
Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
With Sakura satisfied with our curry making skills, he gives us the Labyrinth key, allowing us to finally craft Bron's weapon and fight those pesky twins. Having dealt with that minor inconvenience, we find out Bron's got a huge boner for Praddy's mum. I could have said that another way, but my inner 9-year-old's just too strong. Praddy then receives a package to deliver to some dudes on the unpopulated top floor of Wisden. Here we find a Gandalf lookalike called Rondia. After telling us a Grandpa Simpson-worthy story of the good old days that goes nowhere, he hands us some keys to go deeper into the labyrinth, requesting we fetch him some dragon ore. Now I'm going to turn into a bit of a picky pleb here, because one of the things I like about the dungeons in this game is that when you get to the deepest reachable area, there is a teleport pad conveniently placed to take you back to the entrance. But for whatever reason, after you beat this robot dude and get the dragon ore, you come across a locked door stopping you from progressing further. There's no teleport pad, and then I spent several minutes searching for a teleport pad, and in that time, I could have backtracked to the previous teleport pad, and why is there no teleport pad? Tell me, why is there no teleport? Sorry about that. I don't like backtracking. The reason the game made us backtrack is so we encounter mysterious babe chick in the sword room again. She then casts a spell allowing Pretty to draw the western sword from the ground. Returning to Rondiel, we find him being confronted by soldiers from the rival nation Diaglia. After revealing that he is the Craft Lord of Diamond and headmaster of whatever this fucked up facility is, we defeat the soldiers. It seems there's a war brewing between Wyston and Diaglia. Rondiel doesn't give a squat for the dragon ore, and Pretty's mother Amaris decides to take care of the western sword. Cuntface, Viril, informs us that a man has washed up at the docks. It seems he has amnesia and only remembers faint memories of a whirlpool. After telling Bron it would impress Amirius if he lent us his boat, he reluctantly obliged. At the whirlpool, Pretty fights some big fish dude, then comes across an island within the whirlpool. Viril is being cared for by some local babe named Claire. Informs us that he was injured trying to rescue Razzie and Cenari from the marine dungeon, and that Lubit, the Craft Lord of Amber, is working with Diaglian soldiers to find some sword. After finding Claire's father, who is also the town mayor, he informs us of a secret entrance to the marine dungeon. After fighting through the dungeon depths, you get a choice to rescue Razzie or Cenari. As a sane human being, I chose Cenari. Here we find our tsundere tomboy dressed as a maid, attending to the soldiers' needs. You have the choice to rescue her immediately, or, if you're a man of culture like myself, wait and watch for a bit. One of the soldiers asks Cenari for a kiss, and Pratty steps in to be her knight in shining armour. Pratty finds the others and defeats big old Crabfangers, the monster causing the whirlpool. Peace returns to the island, and the town mayor reveals he was once a student of Pratty's dad, telling us Shintetsu crafted 3 swords of exceptional quality to seal away the holy spirit of fire. He gives Pratty one of these swords, the Eastern Sword, of which Pratty's mother holds onto. Cenari comes in the next morning to ask if Pratty will watch her tournament fight. Regardless of how you respond, Pratty will miss the fight due to story circumstances. After she leaves, another earthquake occurs. Curious, Pratty goes to ask Rondiel about the earthquakes. Here we meet Urexa, the Craft Lord of Jade. Urexa says the Kaguro Island volcano could be to blame for the earthquakes, and Rondiel sends both Urexa and Pratty to investigate. On the way, definitely not Cenari's sister warns Pratty to be careful around Urexa. When chatting at the dock, Urexa reveals his seemingly unnatural obsession with heroes. He brings up a hero in the southern region, Seagent? And asks you what you think the hero would look like. The game gives you 4 possible chances. How you answer these questions determines the appearance of a supporting character in the next arc. Fun fact, the 4 characters you can choose are actually the protagonists from the original Summer Night game, of which none of you would have played unless you can speak Japanese. Once arriving at the volcano, Urexa immediately knocks Pratty out. A mysterious character, who happens to perfectly fit the description we just gave of the Seagent hero, wakes up Pratty. The hero, named Natsumi in my case, advises Pratty to stay put and enters the volcano to take care of something. Inside we find Natsumi confronting Urexa and Lubit. She uses her summon beast to seemingly paralyse the menacing duo. Natsumi then proceeds deeper into the dungeon. We follow, however Urexa catches up to us and we get into a bit of a biff, after which he reveals he cut himself to feel awake and whole again? Wake me up Urexa changed his mind and informs Pratty that one of Shintetsu's swords is at the bottom of the crater. Going deeper, we find the hero Natsumi having a bit of a hard time against. Holy shit, this guy's summoned Satan. At this point, the game gives you the option to run, however I believe you're forced to fight anyway. This is a trick the game often uses, presenting an illusion of choice that really only has one possible outcome. It makes the game seem deeper than it really is, and it is honestly quite a clever trick. After killing the demon spawn, we receive Shintetsu's sword, say farewell to Natsumi, and go home. Or so it seems, as Lubit ambushes Pratty as she's leaving. Without a chance to heal after the last boss fight, things are looking dire for us. Surprising both Lubit and Pratty, a woman suddenly appears. Ruby? After mysterious babe Ruby Chick saves our ass, Pratty flees back home, giving the sword to her mum. The next day, we hear that Sonari won her fight hands down, and she looked to have improved significantly since her last fight. Bron asks Pratty to deliver another shipment of swords to Vance with Razzie. I should also note that there's another earthquake before we head off. After arriving in Vance, we learn that Urexa's sister Rumarai lives here. Razzie, the nosy little runt, upon learning this runs off to meet her. Rumarai invites us in. She tells us she moved from the industrial western because of her illness. We also learn that she is the former Craft Lord of Jade and Tyram, the Craft Lord of Crystal's lover. While leaving Vance, Razzie spots a Diaglian ship with Urexa on board. So once Pratty returns to Wyston, she informs Sakura of this. He aggressively warns Pratty not to return to Vance, but as our protagonist isn't even aware of the concept of discipline, we return to Vance, this time bringing Sonari along for the lols. Upon arriving, Sonari and Razzie say they see Urexa and rush off to the lighthouse. Once Pratty catches up, she sees that they were captured again. Climbing several levels in the lighthouse, Pratty is ambushed by soldiers who imprison her with Razzie, Sonari, and the missing Tyran, Craft Lord of Crystal. Tyran tells us Lubit is motivated by greed and Urexa by revenge for his sister's illness caused by Parista, the Holy Spirit of Fire. He also informs us that the Holy Spirit of Fire lives deep in the Labyrinth below Wyston. Suddenly, a secret door opens and out comes Varl? Apparently Sakura tipped him off about our little excursion. About to escape on the roof, we are intercepted by Urexa, saying he would never approve of a relationship between Tyram and his sister. Pratty defeats him again, and Urexa reveals his actual plan to avenge his sister. As Urexa isn't strong enough to defeat Parista alone, he'll free Parista, allowing it to rampage, but knowing it will ultimately be defeated by a hero, thus getting his revenge. But more importantly, mysterious babe chick finally gets a name. Corin, the Craft Lord of Ruby. Urexa considers his career a failure, as all the Craft Lords know of his corruption. While Corin is explaining that Rumarai could be cured using the Holy Spirit of Ice to defeat Parista. Urexa is perplexed momentarily after this revelation, but doubles down and jumps off the roof. Pew! After some bollocks about what makes a hero, of course. Good riddance, I say. Rumarai takes the news of her brother pretty well, and Tyram announces he will step down as the Craft Lord to serve Rumarai full time. In a moment alone with Pratty, Sonari apologises, saying she knew of all the going-ons up until this point. She drops the bombshell that Corin's her sister and says she apologises for one more thing, but before she can say what it is, she bursts into tears while mumbling, "It might be too late." Early the next morning, Sakura comes into Pratty's room, asking her to accompany him to the Diaglian military base, Fort Murana. We learn that the Gold Guild is selling weapons to Diaglian soldiers. Viril hears of this and decides to come along, much to the displeasure of Nigel. The party get caught by a Diaglian patrol boat when approaching the base. Sakura tells Pratty and Viril to swim to shore while he lures the soldiers away. Honestly, for such a cool area, not much happens here. You fight Lubit and win, then some earthquakes shake the fort. Falling debris seems to kill Lubit. You fight a piece of Parista Lubit was planning to sell to Diaglia, kill it, and then you go home, bada bing bada boom. Pratty awakens to yet another earthquake, and she gets a notice saying her next opponent is Sonari. Sonari then invites Pratty to Bron's office to show her something. She reveals a glowing sword amazing both Bron and Pratty with the quality. In fact, Bron compares the quality to that of a Craft Lord, and comments that she's improved way too fast. Bron, seeing a disheartened Pratty, mentions she could use Shintetsu's hammer to craft a weapon of equal quality. After a small goose chase, Sakura seems to be in possession of the hammer. He also mentions that Sonari's improvement is somewhat unnatural. He hands Pratty the hammer, and she has a vision of her father, triggering an epiphany that it's not only the tools that matter. The important thing is to put your soul into the weapon. After a plethora of cheesy dialogue, Pratty's ready for a match with Sonari. While walking into the arena, Yet another earthquake rocks Wisden. After crushing the hopes and dreams of our friendly rival, Pratty goes to comfort Sonari. Sonari asks if she can look at Pratty's weapon, and Pratty hands it over. Then this happens. After Sonari shows us her best Michael Jackson impersonation, Corrin holds an emergency meeting. Here we find out that the earthquakes are the result of Parister's awakening, and that Shintetsu's swords are no longer enough to keep Parister sealed. Varl storms out, claiming that the Craft Lords are still hiding secrets. Back at the Silver Guild, Rondial, Corrin and Brun explain that the real purpose of the tournament is to distract the populace from the earthquakes while the Craft Lords try to reseal Parister. Finally, they reveal your opponent for the tournament finale. Cuntface, I mean Viril. You get a choice whether to fight Viril or rescue Sonari. I believe the game just shoehorns you into saving Sonari anyway, but I'm not certain. Viril doesn't take kindly to the news that will be a no-show at the finale, cutting deep with his witty insults. After sneaking into the closed labyrinth, we find Sakura in a spot of bother, kneeling before a forgotten foe. Yes, that prick Urexa is somehow still alive, even after falling from a fucking lighthouse. Apparently Parister kept him alive with some powers or something. After beating that emo son of a bitch for surely the last time, Urexa seems to have regained his sanity, being rid of Parister's possession. Ignoring Urexa's warnings, Pratty continues into the depths of the labyrinth. And on the 50th floor, we find the Holy Spirit of Fire, Parister. Cue boss fight you can't win for story purposes. In the face of a seemingly immortal foe, things aren't looking swell for Pratty. But with the devil's luck, Viril walks in, granting Sonari a moment of clarity, just enough to hand Viril her Summoner gem, and then Pratty dies. The end. No, just joking. Pratty wakes up surrounded by familiar faces, and the Holy Spirit of Ice, Kuria? I've definitely got that pronunciation wrong. So it turns out Shintetsu summoned Kuria to defeat Parister, but Parister couldn't be defeated by his counterpart as he is fueled by his strong hatred for mankind. In fact, Wisden was built several hundred years ago just to keep Parister sealed at the seafloor and use his abilities to craft weapons. Shintetsu, unable to defeat Parister, used his soul as a material to craft 3 swords sealing the Holy Spirit, at least temporarily. Kuria then explains that Shintetsu's plan is yet to be fulfilled. Kuria can craft a weapon returning Parister back to his homeworld, but certain materials are required, most of which can be met quite easily with the exception of the last, most important ingredient. The soul of one deeply connected to the wielder of the weapon. Yes, the soul of thy guardian beast. With your guardian beast being willing to sacrifice themselves, knowing of Shintetsu's plan all along, the game gives you the choice. If you agree to sacrifice your guardian beast, you craft the super weapon of your choice and go on to fight Parister. Or, if you choose not to sacrifice your guardian beast, Kuria will mention another method. Excuse me? Could you have told me about this before I had to sacrifice my companion? Can't? So in my playthrough, I sacrificed my guardian beast. No thanks to what's-his-face withholding information, but apparently the other method involves crafting the 4 swords into one. Yes, 4. Kuria had the Saffron sword. Apparently there's quite a scene where the Dioglian soldiers invaded your mother's house to get the swords, but she has them under her thumb, scolding them about their poor manners. Regardless, we eventually get to the final fight, our rematch with Parister. If you've sacrificed your guardian beast, Kuria will join the fray. After defeating the first form, Parister transforms and then some epic battle music starts playing. The tune uses melodies from all throughout the game in a dark medley of sorts. After winning the battle, Parister's fury seems to have subsided, and he willfully returns to his own world. Roll credits. There is a small epilogue in which we get to see Viril and Pratty about to begin their tournament fight, but it fades to white. You also get a romance scene depending on who you chose to hang out with the most. I got the default scenario. Whoever it is congratulates you on becoming the Craft Lord of Iron, implying you beat Viril in the final. There is some post-game content, including a super boss at the 100th floor of the Labyrinth, loads more techniques to collect, and a timed run of the tournament, so it's hardly lacking content. But that's Summer Night's swordcraft story. While it's far from a masterpiece or a must-play, the game doesn't do much wrong and doesn't overstay its welcome. Where the game excels is in the small things like the quality of life functions, for instance. Always being able to press select to have the game hint at the next objective saved me many times when I wasn't paying attention. Or being able to create a temporary save that gets erased once loaded, keeping the tension of a dungeon crawler save point system, but allowing you to quit at any time. or even the fact that when you switch weapons in a fight, you start the next fight with the weapon you switch to, saving you from having to menu dive to change your default weapon. I wouldn't say this game is groundbreaking in any way, but with simple but addictive combat, one of my favourite soundtracks on the Game Boy Advance, solid visuals, a vast array of weapons, a good translation, and a story that's cheesy, cliche but hard not to like, this game packs a serious punch. If I were to have any criticisms, it would be that the game isn't much of a challenge, the Game Boy Advance's inferior sound card holds the excellent composition of the soundtrack back, and at around 10 to 20 hours of content, some might find it a bit short. If the game leaves you hungry for more, fear not, for there is a sequel, and if my memory serves me correctly, it was even better than the original. I'll probably cover it sometime in the future, but as I can't imagine my 12-page analysis of a 13-year-old game that no one has heard of is going to get much traffic, I might leave it on the back burner for a bit. This game is almost the perfect example of a hidden gem, with it being rare if not unheard of in discussions of the best Game Boy Advance games, and only ever getting a mention in the niche gaming forums. There's no doubting its underrated status. If only Nintendo would put the series on Switch so more people could watch my video. Enjoy the series. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my review. Please let me know if you made it through the video without falling asleep. I do try to make it somewhat entertaining. I'm just trying to think about how can I ask people to like and subscribe. It's the most important part of the thing.
Start taking up your clothing if you want to see more. You better like and subscribe.
Yeah, alright. I'll stop mentioning that later. If you want to see more, better like and subscribe.